Hello everyone, this is Julian Greystoke. You may recognize me from my YouTube channel, but you probably also know that I'm a developmental editor. I offer a couple of different kinds of developmental editing. One of them is a developmental read-through, which is a less thorough and more affordable version of developmental editing. What I do with a developmental read-through is I read through your book and I look for mostly big picture things, although I will catch some small stuff too, especially if it's repetitive, and then I will give you a developmental letter at the end. And people have wondered, what does the developmental letter look like? How thorough is it? Am I going to like it? Is it going to help me? So I figured I would read you a pretend example of a developmental letter. This is all fake. I made up this story for this pretend developmental letter. You have no need to worry that I will be using your book or your critiques as an example anywhere, but I wanted to let you see what a developmental letter might look like coming from me. Also, don't mind the sound of my cat in the background. He hears me talking and he thinks I'm talking to him. So let's have a look at the developmental letter for the pretend project Little Joe and the Haunted Shoe. First of all, I will have my disclaimer that I have at the beginning of all of these to just help writers remember that even though I am critiquing for them, their book is their own. Thank you for commissioning a critique from me. Before I begin, I always like to share a disclaimer and reminder. The most important thing I like to impart is that while you have hired me and therefore probably appreciate my thoughts and expertise, also remember that I am but one voice. Ensure that when your book is ready, you get as many eyes on it as possible so you can notice trends and make changes as needed. There is no way to keep critique completely free of opinion, and while I do my utmost to explain every point I will make and to understand your style, tone, and goals, you may disagree with some of or most of my critiques. That is totally allowed. All you have to do is consider my critique and decide whether it makes your book stronger. If it sparks something, or if it is a critique that you hear often, it might be time to make a change. Remember first and foremost that this is your book. You get to make every decision for it. Disclaimer out of the way, on to your critiques. I hope you find them helpful and I wish you great success on your writing journey. That's the disclaimer that you will find at the beginning of all of my developmental letters, but now let's get on to what a letter might look like. Now this one might be on the shorter side. I would tend to be a little bit more detailed and have a few more things that I notice in your version, but again, I am writing a developmental letter for a fake book that I made up for this letter, so things are going to tend to be on the shorter side. I usually start with characters because for me, characters are the most important thing in a book. First of all, we have Little Joe. As a lead, he was well characterized. I really felt how timid and uncertain he was at the beginning, and by the end, he was ready to face anything. I will say that in one scene near the beginning, Joe acted more out of character for that point in the story when he took charge of rescuing Tim from the haunted ice cream truck. I recommend looking at that scene to see if maybe someone else could take charge so you can keep Joe's arc more clear. Tim was the quintessential best friend character we know and love. However, sometimes he felt a little too cliche. He doesn't ever break out of his expected role, and I would love to see him do something besides just be the supportive bestie, especially as Tim is gay, and that further adds to the trope. I liked Martha's character least. For me, she was a little lost and overshadowed by the boys. Is there any way she could have more to do? What are her goals, hopes, dreams, and flaws? Could Martha have a goal separate from the boys and from being Joe's love interest? I do like that Martha didn't need saving all the time, but without that, she really faded into the background. The Haunted Shoe. I love the idea of the villain being a shoe. Who would expect that? And for Joe to have been wearing the villain around for half of the book before they figured it out? I was laughing so hard. No wonder the ghosts always knew where Joe was. The only issue I ran into was that after the characters figure out that it was a shoe all along, I was left wondering why they couldn't deal with it. It's a shoe after all. I would like a few more in-universe reasons why they couldn't just light the shoe on fire or put rocks in it and dump it in a lake, something like that. How is a shoe such a threat once Joe stopped wearing it around? The kids just decided that they couldn't defeat it without trying until the exorcism scene, which was really fun, by the way. So there's an example of characters. I noticed things that I liked and things that maybe weren't working with the characters. Now let's move on to world building. Because we are in a contemporary setting, it can be easy to forget the world building. I think you did a great job with a lot of the ghost lore. I saw what you did with those books at the library and that late night TV show the kids saw while they were having their sleepover. That said, I do wish we had more descriptions of the places the kids went. Even their homes felt pretty bare bones. Like when they were sleeping over in the basement, I want to feel it. I want the hard floor under their sleeping bags, the smell some basements have, the temperature change when they went down there. Let me see the world around them. It's easy to forget when you have characters in a contemporary setting that you still need to build their specific world. Now, obviously, this world building section is going to look pretty different depending on what type of book I'm critiquing, and if it was a fantasy book, the world building section might be bigger because I'd have more to talk about as far as world building goes. But as you can see, I will even touch on world building if it's a contemporary setting. Pacing. I thought this book was paced really well. It might have been a little slow at the start for a YA book, but once it got going, you really had a handle on pace. You might be able to skip the kitchen scene with Joe's mom at the beginning. It's not doing much for the story, and the mom isn't an important character as the book goes on, so she doesn't need such a long introduction. And finally, I talk about craft, so like the actual writing of the story, your style, your skills. Your writing was fun and snappy. Aside from lacking some description here and there, I felt your style fit the genre. Do watch for reused words. It's a common trip up for all of us. I recommend listening to text-to-speech read it back to you, or read it aloud yourself to catch those pesky repeats. You also have a few crutch words that I caught. That, begin and began, caused or causing, smile or any variation of smiles. Go ahead and do a word search for those and see what you can eliminate. So as you can see, I will point out more specific things when I can, especially at this point. So if I notice that you're using a word a lot, I'm going to point it out to you. Don't feel bad. Crutch words happen to all of us, literally all of us, and repeating words is a really, really common thing. Your writing is really dialogue heavy, which works for the tone, but look for places to add more narrative to flesh things out. Your reader can get exhausted reading only dialogue for too long, even if the dialogue is fun and your characters have clear voices, which yours do. And finally, at the end of my developmental letter, I will note down things that like snagged me or that I noticed while I was reading. So this is where I can get a little bit more specific. On page 50, you have Joe asking for the same s'more twice. The shoe cackles a few times in the scene under the porch, but it never does anything like that again. Is that something that was forgotten, or could it be eliminated in that scene because a shoe cackling is a little odd to imagine anyway? When the cat found the shoe, could that scene have a little more punch? It was scary because we didn't know how the shoe would react, but ultimately nothing happened. In chapter 20, Martha thinks about cutting the shoe with her scissors, but we never find out why she doesn't do that. Consider giving her a reason, or cut the line with her thinking about it. So there you go, that is my example of what a developmental letter might look like from me. Again, your version might be a bit longer, it could be a bit shorter, but it's more likely to be a bit longer because I will have more actual details to talk about versus this one where I am, again, talking about a fake story that I made up. Little Joe and the Haunted Shoe is not a story that exists. But if you've been hemming and hawing and wondering if you want to go with the more affordable option from me of a developmental read-through, which by the way, I find to be really helpful, especially for earlier drafts, because yeah, you've got this draft out, but it's not quite ready for a really nitpicky, thorough edit, and you just want to get a feel for what's going well and what's going poorly. A developmental read-through is great for that. Or let's say you're getting a lot of full requests from agents, but none of them are panning out to be anything. Maybe a quick developmental read-through from me can help you figure out where the agents are losing interest. Like I said, the developmental read-throughs are very affordable. It's usually about $1 a page, and I can get through them fairly quickly, especially if I don't have a lot of other orders on the table. So if you're looking for fast turnaround and affordable, plus helpful for figuring out where your story might be tripping up, this might be the ideal scenario for you. I hope this helps you, and I'll see you when I see you. Bye!